It was a quiet Chicago evening, or so it seemed, when a white police officer pulled over a black man, thinking he'd found just another easy target. Can you believe the arrogance? The officer assumed this guy would stay quiet, just another face to forget. But oh, how wrong he was. That man wasn't just anybody, and by the time the truth unraveled, there was no turning back from the storm that was coming. I've dug deep into stories like this, changing names to shield the real people behind them. These aren't cold news reports. They're raw, human tales packed with lessons that hit you right in the gut. The biggest one? Never underestimate anyone. Before we dive into this roller coaster, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? I'm dying to know. Your voice matters, and we're thrilled to hear from you. Picture this. It's dusk and Malik Thompson, a man who's been through this drill before, sees those flashing lights in his rearview mirror. Doesn't it just make your heart sink? He lets out a long weary sigh, pulling his beat-up pickup truck to the curb. The engine grumbles, then falls silent. Malik's hands stay glued to the steering wheel, 10 and 2, just like his father drilled into him. He's passed that same lesson to his nephew, a ritual of survival. Can you imagine the weight of that moment, knowing what might come next? In the side mirror, two officers approach, both white. The older one, mid-50s, struts like he owns the world. Doesn't that kind of attitude just boil your blood? The younger one, maybe late 20s, has sharp eyes but a flicker of doubt. Malik's gaze flicks to the glove box where his registration sits, but he doesn't dare move. Not yet. The older cop raps on the window, and Malik rolls it down, steady as a rock. Evening, Malik says, his voice calm as a still lake. The officer doesn't even acknowledge him, his eyes scanning Malik, then lingering on the truck's peeling paint and rust spots. What are you doing in this neighborhood? The cop demands, his tone dripping with suspicion. Can you feel the tension building? Driving to my mother's house. She lives 2 blocks from here, Malik answers, clear and direct. The officer smirks, and says, your mother lives around here? Like it's impossible. Malik just nods, yes, keeping his cool. Isn't it infuriating how quick some people are to judge? The younger cop hangs back, his hand hovering near his belt, fingers twitching close to his taser. I'm going to need your license and registration, the older cop barks. Malik, still steady, replies, license is in my back pocket. Registration's in the glove box. May I reach for them? The older cop's frown deepens, like he's annoyed Malik knows how to play this game.
Malik moves slowly, deliberately, no sudden moves, no surprises.
Isn't it heartbreaking that he has to think like that just to stay safe? As Malik hands over the documents, the officer tilts his head, eyeing him like he's a puzzle he doesn't trust. You know, a truck like this doesn't really belong in this part of town, he says, his voice laced with condescension. Malik's faint smile is pure defiance. I guess it does now. Oh, that must have stung the cop's pride. The officer's face tightens, clearly not liking that answer, while the younger cop shifts, glancing nervously between them. Can't you just feel the air crackling? The older cop reads the license aloud, Malik Thompson. And what do you do for a living, Mr. Thompson? Malik pauses. Why's he asking that? It's got nothing to do with a traffic stop. I run a tech consulting business, he says simply. The cop snorts. Tech, huh? Sure you do. The mockery in his voice is thick, like he can't fathom a black man in a rusty truck running a successful business, let alone one with government contracts. Doesn't that kind of assumption just make you want to scream? Malik stays silent, refusing to take the bait. He's heard this nonsense before. You got anything in the vehicle we should know about? The officer presses. No, Malik says firmly. Then, out of nowhere, step out of the vehicle. Malik blinks, stunned. Excuse me. Step out of the vehicle now, the cop repeats, his tone hard. The younger officer looks surprised, like he didn't see this coming, but he stays quiet. Malik unbuckles his seatbelt, steps out, standing tall, shoulders relaxed, hands visible, every move screaming calm. Isn't it incredible how composed he stays under pressure? The older cop circles the truck, peering through the windows like he's hunting for something to pin on Malik. Mind if we take a look inside? He asks, but it's not really a question. I do mind, Malik says evenly, unless you have probable cause or a warrant. Boom. The officer's smug smile vanishes. Refusing a search, are we? he sneers. I'm exercising my rights, Malik shoots back, unshaken. The younger cop shifts again, his eyes screaming uncertainty. He's not ready for this to spiral, but the older cop? He's already decided to push it. Can you feel your pulse racing just imagining this? Put your hands on the hood, the older cop orders. Malik doesn't budge. Officer, I've complied fully. There's no reason. The cop steps closer, his voice low and menacing. You think you're smarter than me? Hiding behind big words and fancy talk. Malik doesn't answer. Why should he? He knows this isn't about law or safety. It's about ego, about making him feel small. Doesn't it just burn you up when power gets twisted like that? The officer grabs Malik's arm, forcing him toward the truck. Hands on the hood. Malik complies, placing his palms flat against the cold metal, the chill biting his skin. The younger cop looks uneasy, his silence deafening. As the older cop starts patting him down, Malik speaks, soft but steady. Officer, are you sure this is the path you want to take? That stops the cop for a split second. Can you imagine the chill that ran through him? But his pride's too big to back down now. I don't take advice from criminals, the cop snaps. Malik's slight smile is pure steel. I'm not a criminal, but you may want to call your supervisor before this goes any further. The cop sneers. Is that a threat? No, Malik says, cool as ever, that's a courtesy. Oh, what a moment. Can you feel the power shifting? Before the cop can fire back, his radio crackles to life. A dispatcher's voice cuts through the night, sharp and urgent. Unit 12, we have a supervisor requesting status on a Mr. Malik Thompson. Immediate response required. The older cop's face twists in confusion. What the? He mutters. The younger officer fumbles for his mic, stammering, Unit 12. Subject detained for vehicle check. No issues so far. Can you hear the nervous edge in his voice? A pause, then the dispatcher's tone shifts, firm and final. Release him immediately. Subject is clear. Do not engage further.
Superviseur en route.
The older cop's face goes pale. Did he just realize he stepped into something way bigger than him? Malik turns his head slightly, his voice calm but piercing. I tried to warn you. Isn't that just the perfect jab? Before the officers can even process it, an unmarked black SUV screeches up beside them. A tall woman steps out, white shirt, dark slacks, badge gleaming on her belt. She's federal, and she moves with the kind of authority that makes you sit up straight. Officers, this stop is terminated, she declares. You will hand back Mr. Thompson's documents and step away. Can you imagine the shock on those cops' faces? The older cop stammers, Who? Who are you? She flashes her ID, her voice like steel. Homeland Security. Mr. Thompson is a contracted federal consultant currently assisting in an active investigation. You've just made a very serious error. The younger cop steps back, hands up, like he wants no part of this mess. The older cop's mouth opens, but nothing comes out, he's speechless. Isn't that satisfying? Malik straightens, his shoulders square, his dignity untouched. And next time, before you assume what someone is or isn't, you might want to ask, he says, his words cutting like a knife. He takes his license and registration, nods politely to the federal agent, and walks back to his truck, cool as ever. Behind him, the officers stand frozen, the system they thought they controlled crumbling beneath their feet. Can you feel the ground shaking? The next morning, the headlines don't mention Malik Thompson, and that's exactly how he wants it.
No presse, no drama, juste silence.
Silence gives him space to work, to finish what he's started. At home, Malik sits at his kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee beside a towering stack of folders. His laptop screen glows with data, lists of complaints, incident reports, use of force records. This isn't just paperwork, it's a map to justice. Can you picture him, laser-focused, piecing it all together? Months ago, Malik's software flagged patterns that made his blood run cold. Traffic stops in this neighborhood targeting black drivers twice as often as white ones, searches without cause, arrests without charges. And two names kept popping up over and over, Sergeant Ray Collins and Officer Tyler Reed, the same two who stopped him last night. But it's not just them. Malik's tech isn't just smart, it's relentless, tracing networks, connections, cover-ups. And this time, it's uncovered something massive, a cluster of stops tied to a civil asset forfeiture fund.
Can you believe the audacity of it all?
Cars, cash, property, seized from people who were never even convicted of a crime. On paper, the money's funneled into training programs and equipment budgets. But in reality, it's vanishing into thin air, siphoned off to who knows where.
Malik click open a folder labeled Project Falcon. Inside, it's a gold mine, report, spreadsheet, names.
The local police department's got a sickening pattern, targeting people they think won't fight back, people without connections, without power, without the means to sue. Doesn't that just make your stomach churn? And Malik? He's not just some tech consultant. He's working under a federal contract to blow this whole operation wide open. That stop last night wasn't random. It was a sign they're getting cocky, careless. He closes his laptop, takes a deep breath, steeling himself for what's next. His phone buzzes, a text from Agent Ramirez. Your report verified.
DOJ is moving forward.
Expect pushback. Stay alert.
Malik's finger fly across the screen. Understood. ILL be ready. Can you feel the stakes rising?
Across town, Sergeant Collins is pacing his office like a caged animal. Tyler Reed slumps in a chair, nerves frayed. You told me it was a clean stop. Collins snaps, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. It was until he started acting like some lawyer.
Reed fear back, defensive.
Collins curses, his face red. He wasn't acting like a lawyer. He was acting like someone who knew exactly how far he could push without crossing the line. Can you imagine the panic setting in? Reed shakes his head, but Collins cuts him off, his voice low and furious. That's the problem. You thought he was just some average guy. He slams a folder onto his desk, papers scattering. You profile people like him because they don't usually fight back. They don't usually have resources, but we screwed up. Reed swallows hard, his voice small. What do we do? Collins leans forward, his face hard as stone. We get ahead of it. We make him the problem before he makes us the problem. Oh, don't you just hate that kind of scheming? That afternoon, Malik pulls into his office parking lot. Nothing flashy, just a small two-story building tucked in a quiet corner of the city. His company name isn't even on the sign, just a suite number, keeping things low-key. Inside, his team's waiting, and they're a force to be reckoned with, 3 sharp, diverse young minds. Tasha, the cybersecurity lead, is all focus. Jared, the data analyst, is already crunching numbers. Nina, the legal researcher, has her game face on. They don't need Malik to spell it out. They've seen the same data, reviewed the stop, and they're ready to fight. Can't you just feel the energy in that room? Tasha speaks first, her voice all business.
You want US to lock everything down.
Malik nods. Already done. But now we go proactive. He points to the monitor behind him, where the Project Falcon data glows like a battle plan. We have enough evidence to expose systemic abuse, but if we release it now, they'll spin it, call it a misunderstanding, blame a few bad apples. Can you see how careful he's being, playing chess while they're playing checkers? Jared nods, leaning in. So what's the plan? Malik's eyes gleam with strategy. We bait them. Tasha's eyebrow shoots up. You want to provoke them? No, Malik says, his voice steady but fierce. I want them to do what they've always done, treat someone like they think they're nobody. He pauses, letting it sink in. But this time, they'll pick the wrong person again. Oh, isn't that just a brilliant move? That evening, Malik heads to his mother's house, the one place that feels like home. She greets him with a hug that smells of lavender and memories of her old family recipes. Doesn't that just warm your heart? But she sees right through him. You're walking in with that face again, she says, her voice soft but knowing.
What face?
Malik asks, trying to play it off. The one that says trouble's coming. Malik's smile is bittersweet. Trouble's already here, but it's not coming for me. Can you feel the love and worry in her words? His mother sighs, her eyes full of a mother's fear.
Just be careful. He will, Malik promise.
She reaches up, touching his cheek gently, her voice tender. You always think you can fix the world. Malik's smile softens, his resolve unbreakable. Someone has to try. And with that, he steps back into the fight, ready to turn the tables on those who thought they could underestimate him. Don't you just love his courage? But across town, the gears of retaliation are already grinding. Sergeant Collins is scheming, reaching out to a local reporter with a poisonous story. Malik, the so-called tech consultant under federal protection, is actually tied to shady lawsuits, harboring anti-police grudges.
It's a classic smear, old-school dirty tactique.
But Collins is about to learn something. Malik's not just fighting back, he's building an army. Community leaders, honest journalists, and even the system Collins thought he owned are starting to turn against him.
Can you feel the tide shifting?
The next day, the smear hits the news, a sloppy article full of half-truths and insinuations about Malik's past, painting him as anti-police, his tech work as suspect. But here's the twist: within hours, the community fights back. Church leaders, small business owners, parents whose kids Malik mentored in coding, veterans he helped land tech jobs, they flood social media with stories of his integrity. He got my son his first job. He built free security systems for our street. I've known Malik for 20 years, that man's the real deal.
Can you believe the power of a community standing together?
Collins is floored, slamming the article down in his office. What the hell is happening? He roars. Reed, pale as a ghost, stammers, "Sir, I think we underestimated who he knows."
You think?
Collins snaps, his plan unraveling. The whole point was no one would back him up.
Reed shift, Uneasi.
What now? Collins's voice drops, cold and determined.
Oui Pouchardet.
He'll slip up eventually.
No one is perfect.
But what if he doesn't?
Collins says Arden.
Then we make him. Oh, doesn't that just send a chill down your spine? Back at his office, Malik's team is ready for war. Tasha pulls up new data. Collins and another officer are planning an unauthorized surveillance sweep tonight, on you. Malik's frown is all focus. They want to rattle me, make me look guilty. Nina's worried. We could alert the DOJ, shut it down. But Malik shakes his head, a glint in his eye. Not yet. If they try to trap me, we'll get video, audio, proof of targeting.
Tasha hésitate.
You're using yourself as bait? Malik's smile is pure grit. I'm giving them a choice. They double down, they expose themselves. They back off, they're scared. Either way, we win. Can you feel the brilliance of his plan? That night, Malik drives his old pickup down the route Tasha flagged, and sure enough, 2 patrol cars are waiting, lights flaring. But this time he's ready, dashboard camera streaming to a secure server, witnesses trailing discreetly, a pastor and a retired judge, pillars of the community. Collins himself steps out, sneering, "Out of the vehicle, Mr. Thompson."
Maliquet s'en stay visible.
What's the charge this time? We'll discuss that after you step out, Collins snaps. Can you feel the déjà vu, but with a twist? Malik steps out, calm as ever, glancing at the witness's car, their cameras rolling. Collins, blind to it, accuses, "You've been avoiding lawful stops." Malik's eyebrow arches. "This is the only stop I've seen, and it's not lawful, no checkpoint notices." Collins's face reddens, but before he can push further, headlights blaze, an unmarked SUV. Agent Ramirez steps out with DOJ investigators and a news crew. Malik's team tipped off. Cameras roll, lights glare, and Collins is caught. "This stop is over," Ramirez orders. Can you imagine his shock? Malik stands tall, his voice soft but lethal.
Iwarned Yuons. Iwonte again.
DOJ agents read Collins his rights, cameras catching every word. Reed drops his flashlight, stepping back, eyes wide as the storm hits. By morning, headlines scream, "Community leader exposes police corruption."
DOJ intervenez.
Malik's at the center, but for him, it's not about fame, it's about momentum. The system tried to break him twice and failed. Now it's about accountability, and they're just getting started.
Don't you just feel the fire of justice burning?
Across town, in the dim glow of his office, Sergeant Ray Collins was weaving a sinister web, thinking he could outsmart everyone.
Can you believe the nerve?
He dialed up a local reporter, feeding them a toxic story about Malik Thompson, a so-called tech consultant under federal protection, supposedly tied to shady lawsuits and brimming with anti-police venom.
A smear campagnant, Pure and simple, all, dirty tactique.
But oh, Collins was in for a shock. He underestimated something massive. Malik wasn't just building a defense. He was crafting a counterattack that would shake the city to its core. Doesn't that just make your heart race? This time, it wasn't just Malik's tight-knit team or the Department of Justice watching his every move. No way. Community leaders, the kind who command respect, were locked in. Journalists who lived for the truth were on high alert. And most thrilling of all? The very system Collins thought he had in his pocket was starting to turn on him, like a snake biting its own tail.
Can you feel the table tournin?
The next day the news hit, but it wasn't the story Collins had schemed for. Oh, what a miscalculation. Sure, the smear piece ran, a sloppy, poorly written article dripping with speculation about Malik's past, hinting he was anti-police, his tech work some kind of scam. Typical nonsense. But then, something incredible happened. Can you guess what? Within hours, the community roared back. Not just random voices, but heavyweights, church leaders who'd known Malik forever, small business owners he'd lifted up, parents whose kids he'd mentored in coding workshops, veterans he guided into tech careers. These weren't just people, they were pillars of the city, and they were furious. Isn't that just electrifying? Social media didn't spread the smear, it exploded with stories of Malik's goodness. He helped my son land his first job, one post declared. He built free security systems for every shop on our street, another shouted. I've known Malik for 20 years, that man's integrity is rock solid. The backlash was lightning fast, and for Collins, it was a disaster he couldn't wrap his head around. Can you imagine the panic setting in? In his office, Collins slammed the article onto his desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. What the hell is happening? He bellowed, his face red with rage. Officer Tyler Reed, pale as a ghost, stammered, Sir, I think we underestimated who he knows.
You think?
Collins growled, his voice dripping with venom. The whole point was that no one would back him up. That's why we picked him. Reed shifted, his discomfort palpable.
What do we do now?
Collins leaned forward, his voice low, almost a hiss.
We poucharder.
He has to slip up eventually.
No one is perfect.
Reed's eyes widened. But what if he doesn't? Collins's gaze turned cold, his words chilling. Then we make him. Oh, doesn't that just send shivers down your spine? Back at Malik's office, the air was charged with determination. He gathered his team, Tasha, Jared, and Nina, each one a powerhouse in their own right. Tasha pulled up a fresh dataset, her fingers flying across the keyboard. We've tracked 2 officers behind these illegal stops. Collins is one, and the other's planning an unauthorized surveillance sweep tonight. Malik's brow furrowed. On who? Jared's voice was grim. You. They flagged your vehicle, set up an unofficial checkpoint route.
Can you feel the tension tightening like a vis?
Malik nodded slowly, his mind racing. They want to rattle me, make me look like I'm dodging the police or resisting. Nina's face was etched with worry. We could alert the DOJ now, shut it down. But Malik shook his head, a spark of defiance in his eyes. Not yet. If they try to trap me, it'll give us what we need, video, audio, undeniable proof of targeting. Tasha hesitated, her voice soft but urgent. You're using yourself as bait? Malik's faint smile was pure steel. I prefer to think of it as giving them a choice. Isn't that just the boldest move you've ever heard? He locked eyes with each of them, his voice steady but fierce. If they double down, they expose themselves. If they back off, they admit they're scared. Either way, we win. That night, Malik slid into his old pickup, driving down the route Tasha had pinpointed. Sure enough, 2 patrol cars lurked near an intersection, no public checkpoint signs in sight.
Can you feel your pulse quickening?
The second he rolled past the stop sign, lights blazed behind him. Here we go again. Same routine, same officers, but this time, the outcome was going to be wildly different. Malik was ready, his dashboard camera streaming live to a secure server. And get this, he had 2 witnesses tailing him discreetly in another car, a local pastor and a retired judge, both giants in the community.
Talk about stacking the deck.
Can you imagine the confidence that gave him? The officers approached, and who steps out but Sergeant Collins himself, his sneer practically dripping with arrogance.
Out of the vehicle, Monsieur Thompson.
Malik kept his hands visible, his voice calm. What's the charge this time? Collins's sneer widened. We'll discuss that after you step out. Malik exited the truck, his posture relaxed, his eyes flicking to the witness's car, their cameras already rolling. Collins didn't notice, too busy trying to control the narrative. Can you believe his blindness? You've been avoiding lawful stops, Collins accused, his voice smug. Malik's eyebrow shot up. I have? This is the only stop I've encountered, and it's not lawful, no posted checkpoint notices. Collins's face reddened, his plan unraveling.
Step away from the vehicle. Malik complied, Stay cool ice.
You're making a mistake, Sergeant.
Can you feel the power shifting?
That's where you're wrong, Collins snapped. The mistake was thinking you could play games with this department. Malik's smile didn't waver.
I'm not the one playing game.
And then bam! Headlights flared across the street. An unmarked black SUV screeched to a stop, and out stepped Agent Ramirez, the same federal powerhouse from before, flanked by 2 DOJ investigators and a news crew Malik's team had tipped off. Cameras rolled, lights blazed, and the narrative flipped in an instant. Can you picture Collins's jaw dropping?
Ramirez's voice cut through the night. Sergeant Collins, this stop is over.
You and your officers are ordered to stand down. Collins's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish out of water. He'd prepped for a brawl, not a press conference. Malik stood tall, his voice soft but deadly.
I warned you once.
I won't have to warn you again. The DOJ investigators started reading Collins his rights, every word caught on camera. Reed, the younger officer, didn't even fight it. He dropped his flashlight, stepping back, eyes wide as the storm crashed over them. Isn't that just the sweetest justice? By morning, the headlines had turned the city upside down. Community leader targeted by police exposes corruption. Illegal traffic stops under federal investigation.
DOJ intervenait in civil rights case.
Malik Thompson's name was everywhere, but for him, it wasn't about the spotlight. It was about momentum. The system had tried to crush him twice, and twice it had failed. This time it wasn't just about surviving, it was about accountability, and oh, they were just getting started.
Can you feel the fire of change burning?
The morning after Collins's arrest, Chicago felt different, like the air itself was charged with hope. Not just because of the headlines, but because people were starting to believe, really believe, that things could change. At the community center where Malik had taught cybersecurity classes for years, folks gathered, not out of curiosity, but out of solidarity. Older men who'd been unfairly stopped, single mothers who'd feared calling the police, young people who'd felt invisible, they stood together united. Why? Because Malik had shown them one person could stand up to power and win. Doesn't that just give you chills? Inside the center, Malik sat with his team, the air buzzing with energy. Tasha, Jared, and Nina looked serious but alive, ready to keep fighting. Tasha spoke first, her voice sharp. We've analyzed Collins's arrest data. He's been fudging reports for years, dozens of stops, most never even made it to court. Jared jumped in, his excitement palpable. We cross-referenced the asset forfeiture fund. Money seized from drivers? It's been funneled into off-the-books accounts. Collins wasn't working alone. Malik nodded, his mind racing. We expected that. The question is, how deep does this go? Can you feel the stakes climbing higher? Nina slid a folder across the table, her eyes intense. Deeper than we thought. Inside were printed emails, damning communications between Collins and his boss, Captain Roy Hanley. The messages were blatant. Pick your targets carefully. Go for the ones who won't fight back. Keep the paperwork clean. Malik leaned back, exhaling slowly, the weight of it hitting him. They built a machine, he said, his voice low. And it's been running a long time. Can you imagine discovering a scheme that cold? Meanwhile, at the police department, panic was spreading like wildfire. Captain Hanley paced behind his desk, barking orders like a cornered animal. I want every shred of paperwork on Collins's stops pulled and reviewed.
If anything look bad, make it disappear.
An officer hesitated, voice shaky. Sir, the DOJ's already locking down the records. Hanley froze, then hissed, his tone dangerous. Then we need to control the narrative before they do. He grabbed his phone.
Call the Union, the media contact.
Say Malik Thompson's exploiting this for money. Discredit him now. But oh, Hanley had no idea. Malik wasn't fighting alone anymore. Can you sense his desperation? That afternoon, Malik stood before a packed press conference, the kind that makes history. He didn't want to be there. Cameras weren't his thing, but this wasn't about him. It was about the people behind him, community leaders, families, honest officers who'd stepped up in the last 24 hours. Malik cleared his throat, his voice steady but powerful. For years, certain cops thought they could act without consequences, intimidating, manipulating, profiting off the people who trusted them. He paused, letting the truth sink in. But they were wrong. Can you hear the crowd holding their breath? Tasha stepped up, holding a poster board that screamed, Project Falcon Exposed. Malik's voice rose, unwavering. Our independent investigation, now backed by federal authorities, has uncovered a system of illegal traffic stops, fake reports, and stolen public funds.
Camera flash lit up the room like lightning.
And let me be clear, he said, his eyes fierce. This isn't about tearing down law enforcement, it's about rebuilding it, making sure those who serve are held to the same standards as those they police. Isn't that just a rallying cry? A reporter shouted, Do you fear retaliation? Malik's slight smile was pure courage. If I did, I would have stopped long ago. The room chuckled, but the seriousness lingered. Another reporter called out, What do you say to those who tried to discredit you? Malik paused, then dropped a bombshell. Thank you.
The crowd murmure, confused.
Every lie, every attempt to silence me, just proved how desperate they are, and desperation means the truth is winning. Can you feel the power in those words? That night, as the press conference replayed on every news station, Hanley made a frantic call. Get me someone who can fix this. But there was no one left. The system he'd built to shield himself was crumbling, slipping through his fingers like sand. Can you imagine his fear? Back at the office, Malik and his team were already planning their next move. Tasha pointed to a new file, her voice electric. We've got anonymous tips, more officers ready to testify, internal whistleblowers. Jared added, and someone from the finance department, they're ready to spill about the missing funds. Malik nodded, his resolve unshaken. Good.
We keep going.
Nina hesitated, her voice soft but urgent. You know they won't stop, right? They'll keep coming. Malik's smile was fierce.
I'm counting on it.
Can you feel the unstoppable momentum? He stood, gazing out at the city lights twinkling like stars. For too long, they thought silence was safety, that intimidation was power. But now he turned to his team, eyes blazing, they know the truth. Across town, in a dark office, Hanley stared at his reflection in the window. For the first time in years, he didn't see control, he saw fear. The man they dismissed, the one they thought was an easy target, had become their worst nightmare, accountability. Doesn't that just feel like poetic justice? The next morning, the battle lines were drawn. Headlines split the city. One, pushed by Hanley's allies, sneered, Tech consultant exploits police investigation for personal gain.
The other, racing through independent media and trusted community outlet, Roard, whistleblower step forward.
Project Falcon, bigger than expected. But Malik? He wasn't chasing headlines, he was plotting the next strike.
Can you sense the chess game unfolding?
At the office, his team gathered, ready for war. Tasha pointed to the latest reports, her voice urgent. The finance department whistleblower confirmed it. The forfeiture funds were funneled through a fake non-profit Hanley controls. Jared chimed in, that non-profit issued training grants that went straight into personal accounts.
Malik's eyes narrowed, the truth sinking in.
The corruption was deeper, darker, and more brazen than they'd ever imagined. Can you believe the scale of their greed? Nina leaned in, her eyes wide with urgency, her voice almost a whisper. It's not just Hanley. 2 city officials signed off on this mess. Can you believe it? This could climb all the way to the mayor's office. Malik took a deep breath, the weight of her words sinking in like a stone. They had enough evidence to spark a citywide investigation, but evidence alone wouldn't cut it, not by a long shot. They needed the people's outrage, the kind that shakes foundations. They needed Chicago to see the ugly truth hidden in the shadows, and they had to move fast before Captain Hanley could slither into his next scheme. Can you feel the clock ticking? Meanwhile, at police headquarters, Captain Hanley wasn't twiddling his thumbs. Oh no. In a secretive meeting, he huddled with the police union president and 2 city officials caught in the scandal's web. His voice was sharp, commanding. We hold a press conference, and we hit hard. Accuse Malik of hacking illegal surveillance. Paint him as the criminal. The union president hesitated, his brow furrowed. We'll need proof, Roy. Hanley's smile was ice-cold, chilling the room.
We don't need proof.
We need doubt. One official piped up, voice shaky, but Hanley cut him off, his tone flat and ruthless. If the DOJ gets ahead of us, we're done for. So we fight dirty. Can you imagine the gall of that man, thinking he could twist the truth like that? That afternoon, Malik's team unleashed their counterstrike, and oh, it was a masterpiece. No backroom deals or legal mumbo-jumbo for them. They went big with a public town hall, streamed live online for the world to see, open to the press, open to every citizen who cared. The auditorium was packed to the rafters with Chicagoans, some who'd never trusted the police, others who'd once defended them, but now? They were united by a shared sense of betrayal, their hearts raw and ready for truth. Can you picture that sea of faces, all hungry for justice? Malik took the podium, and let me tell you, he didn't speak like a man out for revenge. No way. His words carried the weight of truth, steady and unshakable. For years, Project Falcon operated under the arrogant belief that no one would notice, that victims would stay silent, that data would just vanish. He paused, letting the gravity of it sink into every soul in the room. But the victims didn't stay silent. The data didn't disappear. Can you feel the power in that moment, the room holding its breath? Behind him, a massive screen flared to life, displaying rows of names, faces, stories, real people, wrongfully stopped, arrested, fined, many sitting right there in the crowd, their pain laid bare. Tasha stepped up, her voice clear as she narrated the changing slides. This isn't just about Malik. This is about hundreds of lives torn apart, jobs lost, homes seized, families broken. Jared jumped in, his passion electric.
And the money?
Oh, it went right here. The screen shifted, revealing bank records, transfers, signatures, clear, undeniable proof.
The crowd's murmure greloudé, a wave of shock Angers, and validation crashing through the room.
Can you hear their voices rising? Malik raised a hand, silencing the uproar. I don't want your anger, he declared, his voice firm but warm.
I want your action.
He turned to the cameras streaming live, his gaze piercing through every screen. To anyone watching, this isn't about race or anti-police nonsense. This is about power and the people who think they can wield it without consequence. He pointed to the crowd behind him, their faces a testament to resilience.
Not anymore.
Doesn't that just make your heart soar? Across town, Captain Hanley was glued to the livestream in his office, his phone buzzing like a swarm of bees, calls from the union, city officials, his own officers, all spiraling into panic. A knock at the door jolted him, and who walked in? None other than Agent Ramirez, striding in like she owned the place. We need to talk, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Hanley tried to play it cool. I'm busy. Her response was a verbal slap.
Not anymore.
She slapped a folder onto his desk, an official DOJ notice inside screaming, "You are under federal investigation. Effective immediately." Can you imagine the blood draining from his face? Hanley's breath caught, his voice shaky. On what grounds? Ramirez's faint smile was pure steel. On the grounds that you thought no one was watching. She leaned closer, her words cutting deep. And you underestimated the wrong man. Oh, doesn't that just feel like a mic drop? Back at the town hall, as the meeting wrapped up, Malik stepped away from the podium, swarmed by dozens of people. Some offered heartfelt thanks, others poured out their own stories of injustice, their voices trembling with hope. But one figure stood apart, an older gentleman, late 60s, dressed simply, his weathered hands telling a lifetime of stories. I knew your father, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. He always told us, when you see something wrong, you either fix it or you become part of it. Malik's smile was soft, his eyes misting as memories flooded back. That's what he taught me too. Can you feel the weight of that legacy? The man nodded, his gaze steady. Your fight's not just for you, son. It's for all of us. Malik looked around at the room, at faces brimming with hope, determination, and courage. I know, he said quietly, his resolve unshaken. And I'm not done yet. But oh, the real twist was lurking just out of sight, because what Malik didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that a new whistleblower had just flipped inside city government. And the secrets they carried? They wouldn't just take down a captain, they could topple the entire department and beyond. Can you feel the storm brewing? The next morning, Malik's phone shattered the silence at 6:12 a.m. Caller ID, Agent Ramirez. He answered in a heartbeat, his pulse already racing. We have a development, she said, her voice clipped and urgent. Meet me at the federal building. Bring no one. No explanation needed. Malik grabbed his bag and bolted out the door, the city still cloaked in dawn's half-light. Can you imagine the adrenaline pumping through him? At the federal building, Ramirez led him to a small, windowless conference room, the air thick with tension. 2 other agents stood inside, their faces grim, and at the table sat a woman, late 40s, brown hair, glasses, nervously wringing her hands, a city employee badge dangling from her neck. Ramirez shut the door with a thud. This is Sandra Mills, Finance Department, she said. She's the whistleblower who reached out last night. Malik nodded, calm on the outside, but inside? His heart was pounding. Can you feel the stakes skyrocketing? Sandra's voice trembled as she spoke, words tumbling out fast. I wasn't part of it. I didn't know what I was signing, but I found the records. Captain Hanley wasn't just routing forfeiture funds, he was siphoning off city budget money too. Ramirez slid a thick folder toward Malik, its weight heavy with truth. Sandra pressed on, her voice shaking. I traced over $2.3 million. Money meant for community outreach, housing assistance, police diversity training, all funneled into fake non-profits. She swallowed hard, her eyes wide. And those non-profits? Owned by Hanley's family and 2 city council members. Can you believe the depth of that corruption? Malik leaned forward, his voice steady but intense. You sure? Sandra nodded, resolute. I have documents, emails, bank transfers, and I've secured backup copies. Ramirez added, her tone firm, we've verified enough to open a federal corruption case. Malik closed his eyes for a moment, the enormity of it washing over him. The corruption ran deeper than he'd feared, but deep corruption was fragile, it relied on silence, and that silence had just been shattered. Isn't that just exhilarating? Meanwhile, at police headquarters, Hanley was coming apart at the seams. Word of Sandra's whistleblower complaint had reached him, and the department was buzzing with whispers. Officers avoided his gaze, their loyalty crumbling. He stormed into the briefing room, his voice a bark. Listen up. No one talks to the press. No one talks to the DOJ. Leak anything and you're done, immediately. The room fell silent, but it wasn't obedience, it was the silence of people weighing their options, ready to bolt. Hanley felt it, the loyalty he'd banked on for years slipping away, replaced by contagious fear. Can you sense his empire cracking? At Malik's office, the team gathered, the air electric with possibility. Tasha scanned the new evidence, her eyes wide. This is huge. Jared let out a low whistle. We can take down the department, maybe even the council. Nina frowned, her voice cautious. But that's not without risk. If we go public, they'll come after us harder than ever. Malik nodded, his jaw set. I know. Tasha locked eyes with him, her question sharp. What's the play? Malik took a breath, his voice steady but fierce. We go public, but not like before. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying. I'm calling in every connection we have, journalists, community leaders, former officers ready to speak. We're not dropping a bombshell. His faint smile was pure fire. We're starting a reckoning. Can you feel the ground shaking? That evening, the plan roared into action. First, a leak, a detailed report dropped anonymously to multiple news outlets, packed with bank records, emails, testimonies. It didn't just expose Hanley and Collins, it fingered the council members who'd signed off on the fake non-profits. Social media erupted, Project Falcon trending nationwide within hours. Then came the press conference, and oh, it was a sight to behold. Malik didn't stand alone. He was flanked by Sandra Mills, Tasha, Jared, Nina, officers who'd refused to join the illegal stops, community leaders, and victims, all united. Malik's voice was clear, unwavering. For too long, power has hidden behind titles and uniforms. For too long, those who spoke out were silenced. He paused, scanning the sea of reporters. But not this time. This time, those who abuse power will answer for it. Can you hear the cheers in your mind? Camera flashes exploded like lightning, reporters shouting questions. Is the mayor involved? Will there be arrests? Do you fear for your safety? Malik's grim smile was pure resolve. I'm not afraid because I'm not alone. He gestured to the people behind him, a wall of strength. We're not just fighting corruption, we're reclaiming accountability. That night, Chicago shook. The DOJ announced formal charges against Hanley, an arrest warrant issued. The 2 council members were slapped with investigations. But the biggest shock? Several officers, including Collins, flipped, agreeing to testify for reduced sentences. Hanley's system was collapsing from the inside. Can you believe the speed of that downfall? Malik had done the impossible. He hadn't just exposed corruption. He turned fear into action, silence into voices, oppression into unstoppable momentum. But he knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. Power doesn't surrender quietly, and the most dangerous players were still out there, lurking. By morning, Malik's name wasn't just in headlines. It was on the lips of every official, officer, and citizen who'd ever felt powerless. The reckoning had begun, but so had the counterattack. At City Hall, behind closed doors, powerful men gathered in a panic, not just cops and council members, but businessmen, contractors, political donors, all tangled in the web Malik had exposed. Can you feel their desperation? A sharp, cold voice cut through the room. We underestimated him. That was our mistake. Now we can't play defense anymore. Another voice, nervous, asked, "What do you suggest?" The reply was chilling. Discredit him fully, dig into his past, find anything, or make something up. And if that fails, we end this quietly. The room fell silent, the air heavy with dread. For the first time, they weren't talking damage control. They were fighting for survival. Can you imagine the stakes at that moment? Meanwhile, Malik and his team huddled for another strategy session, the air thick with resolve. Tasha laid out new intel, her voice urgent. Since the press conference, we've had anonymous threats, emails, voicemails. Someone even tried to hack our cloud servers. Jared added, the leaks trace back to an off-the-books contractor hired by the city. Nina frowned, her worry palpable. They're not just trying to silence us legally anymore. Malik nodded, his expression grim. I expected this. The question is, how far are they willing to go? Right on cue, his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, "We see you. Back down or pay the price." Tasha glanced over his shoulder, her voice low. That's no bluff. Malik pocketed the phone, his voice steady. It's fear. He turned to his team, eyes blazing. Double security protocols. No one works alone, and we keep the momentum going. He pointed to the files on the table. Fear means we're winning. Can you feel the defiance in his words? That evening, Agent Ramirez called, her voice tense. We've picked up chatter. They're not just trying to discredit you anymore. I know, Malik said, unflinching. We believe a private security group's been contracted, unofficial, untraceable. Let me guess, Malik replied, to make the problem go away? We're increasing protection for you and your team, Ramirez said firmly. Malik shook his head, his resolve like iron. I appreciate it, but I won't be driven underground. That's what they want. Then be ready, they're desperate now. So am I, Malik shot back, his voice fierce. Desperate to finish this.
Can you feel the clash of wheels, the battle lines drawn?
The next morning, Chicago woke to a vicious attack, but not with bullets or fists. Oh no, this was a war of lies. A major news outlet dropped a so-called exclusive screaming, "Federal whistleblower under investigation for fraud and tax evasion." Can you believe the audacity? The article was a twisted mess, stuffed with distortions, half-truths, and outright fabrications, claiming Malik Thompson had cooked the Project Falcon data for his own gain. Anonymous sources, how convenient, painted him as a schemer, but they didn't count on one thing: Malik's unshakable resolve. Doesn't it just boil your blood when power tries to smear the truth? Within minutes, social media erupted like a volcano. Half the comments were pure outrage: how dare they attack him? While the other half swirled with confusion: is this true? Another fake hero. Just more corruption. Tasha, furious, slammed her fist on the desk, the sound echoing through their office. They're trying to torch your credibility before the DOJ can nail the rest of them. Jared's voice was tense, his eyes wide. If they pull this off, public support could crumble. Our witnesses might bail. Can you feel the pressure mounting? But Malik? He was calm as a still lake, his strength a beacon in the storm. No way we let them control the narrative, he declared, his voice steady but fierce. He grabbed his phone, his fingers moving with purpose. It's time. That afternoon, Malik held another press conference, but this one was different, a game changer. No stuffy podium for him. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Agent Ramirez, whistleblowers, victims, and new allies, state prosecutors, civil rights attorneys, even former cops who'd once been too scared to speak out. Can you picture that powerhouse lineup, ready to fight for justice? Malik spoke first, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. The lies spread about me today? Totally predictable. Power doesn't go down quietly, it tries to poison the truth before the truth can finish its work. He paused, letting the weight settle over the crowd. But here's what they didn't see coming. He gestured to Ramirez, who stepped forward, her presence commanding. The Department of Justice has reviewed every single allegation. Not only are they false, but those so-called sources in the article? They're financially tied to the very officials now under federal indictment. Can you imagine the gasps in that room? A reporter shouted, "Do you have proof?" Ramirez held up a thick file, her voice unwavering. Every page. Camera flashes lit up the room like a lightning storm. Malik pressed on, his words ringing with conviction. This smear campaign wasn't just an attack on me, it was an attack on accountability, on every single person who dared to say enough. The room fell silent, the air heavy with awe. For those who still doubt me, Malik added, his eyes fierce, I don't ask for your trust. I ask for your attention. Watch what happens next. Can you feel the anticipation crackling? And what happened next? It shook Chicago to its core. Federal agents stormed police headquarters, council members' homes, executing warrants with precision. That private security firm that dared threaten Malik? Dozens arrested, hundreds of records seized. Even the news outlet that ran the smear piece, get this, their editor was subpoenaed, and their story collapsed like a house of cards. Can you believe the speed of that justice? That night, as the city reeled from a tidal wave of arrests, Malik stood alone on his office balcony, the cool breeze carrying the weight of his fight. He gazed out at the twinkling lights of a community he'd once protected quietly, in the shadows. But now? That was impossible. He'd become the face of a movement, not because he craved the spotlight, but because silence had never been an option. Can you feel the gravity of his journey? Tasha joined him, her voice soft but steady. We won't sleep much tonight. Malik's faint smile was pure resolve. That's fine. They won't either. Behind him on the office wall, the original Project Falcon blueprint still hung, but someone had crossed out project and scrawled a new word above it, justice. Doesn't that just give you chills? By morning, Chicago wasn't just watching, it was waiting, holding its breath to see if accountability was real or if power would slink back, as it always had. Malik woke to a flood of messages, dozens pouring in. Some were from strangers offering heartfelt support, others from familiar faces, business owners, church leaders, even former officers thanking him for his courage. But one message stopped him cold, a name he hadn't expected, Lieutenant Rachel Pierce, an officer still inside the department. Her note was simple but electrifying, we need to talk. I have evidence that changes everything. Can you feel your pulse racing? That afternoon, Malik met Pierce at a quiet diner on the city's edge, the kind of place where secrets are shared over coffee. She looked tired but determined, her eyes burning with resolve. I've seen enough corruption in my time, she said, her voice low. But what Hanley did? It's deeper than even you found. She slid a flash drive across the table, its weight heavy with truth. Bodycam footage from Collins, from other stops, stuff deleted from the official system. I kept copies. Malik frowned, his gut tightening. How bad? Pierce's voice was cold as ice. Bad enough to prove Hanley didn't just target people like you. He went after officers who wouldn't play along. Can you imagine the shock of that revelation? She leaned in, her words chilling. He had whistleblowers silenced. One officer's accident. It wasn't an accident. And that private security firm? They didn't just threaten you, they were used to intimidate us. Malik's breath caught, the scope of it hitting him like a freight train. This wasn't just corruption, it was a full-blown criminal conspiracy. And now they had proof. Can you feel the stakes soaring? Back at the office, Malik's team gathered, the air buzzing with urgency. Tasha loaded the flash drive, her fingers trembling slightly. The footage was a gut punch, more than just illegal stops. It showed Hanley ordering evidence destroyed, threatening officers, and most damning, a recorded meeting where he bragged openly about the council members. They'll cover for us. They've done it before. They owe me. Jared's hands clenched into fists, his anger palpable. Nina whispered, her voice barely audible, "This is it. This takes down the entire operation." Malik nodded, his eyes locked on the screen. It takes down more than that. This shatters the illusion that silence keeps you safe. Can you feel the power of that truth? The next day, Malik met Agent Ramirez, her face all business as she reviewed the footage. "This is more than enough for federal conspiracy charges," she said, her voice firm. "Not just against Hanley and the council, against everyone who protected them." She paused, her eyes searching his. "But if we move now, the city's leadership will be gutted. There'll be backlash." Malik nodded, his jaw set. "That's the risk." Ramirez studied him, her question heavy. "You sure you're ready for this?" Malik's faint smile was pure steel. "I wasn't ready when they pulled me over. I wasn't ready when they smeared me. I wasn't ready when they tried to intimidate my team." His expression hardened, his voice fierce. "But I'm ready now." Can you feel his unbreakable resolve? The next 48 hours hit like a hurricane. Federal agents raided police headquarters. Hanley was hauled out of his home in cuffs. Council members were rounded up. Businessmen and contractors named in the conspiracy were indicted. And that private security firm? Shut down cold. For the first time in Chicago's history, officers filed lawsuits against their own department, citing harassment and intimidation. The walls of corruption had finally crumbled, and in their place, the truth stood tall. Can you hear the city cheering? That evening, at a press conference that felt like history in the making, Malik didn't stand alone. Lieutenant Pierce was by his side, along with whistleblowers, victims, and community leaders who'd once doubted him. Malik's voice rang out, clear and powerful. "This fight was never just about me. It's about what happens when power forgets it serves the people, not the other way around." He paused, the weight of his words settling over the crowd. "When they stopped me that night, they thought they'd found an easy target, someone they could silence." He looked out at the cameras, his gaze piercing. But every person they silenced became a voice in this movement, and today, those voices are louder than ever. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound shaking the room. Can you feel the energy surging? Back at headquarters, the interim police chief, a respected veteran brought in by federal monitors, addressed his shaken officers. "I know some of you are scared," he said, his voice steady. "But fear can paralyze you or push you to do better." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "Starting today, we will do better." Can you sense the shift, the dawn of something new? That night, Malik returned to his office, the streets quieter, calmer, but not silent. Tasha, Jared, and Nina were already there, poring over final reports. Tasha's voice was soft but proud. "You did it." Malik shook his head, his smile warm. "We did it." Nina grinned, her question bright. "What now?" Malik gazed out at the city skyline, its lights twinkling like hope. "Now we make sure this never happens again." He glanced at the whiteboard where justice still glowed, a new phrase beneath it, "Accountability is just the beginning." But deep down, Malik knew the truth. systems rebuild, and power creeps back into the shadows. He wasn't naive, he was ready. Can you feel his vigilance? The headlines had shifted, no longer about arrests, but the aftermath, city shaken by police corruption scandal. More arrests expected. Federal oversight begins as community demands reform. Whistleblowers credit black tech consultant for exposing decade-long abuse. Malik should have felt relieved, but he didn't. Exposing corruption was one thing, rebuilding trust? That was a whole new battle. At the office, he gathered his team, Tasha diving into the latest reports. The DOJ's arrested 23 officials so far. Hanley Collins, the council members, all facing federal charges. Jared added, his voice bright, community response is mostly positive. Donations are pouring into the victims' legal defense fund. Nina frowned, her caution clear. But we've also had threats, some from ex-cops, some anonymous. Malik nodded, unfazed. I expected that. He glanced at the whiteboard. Justice, accountability is just the beginning. The fight continues. Can you see the road ahead? We've torn down the old structure, Malik said, his voice steady. Now they'll try to stop us from building a new one. Tasha leaned forward, her question sharp. So what's our next move? Before Malik could answer, his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We're not finished. You ruined lives. Time to pay.
Jared's eyes narrowed.
They're getting desperate. Malik stayed calm, his voice cool. And desperate people make mistakes. Can you feel the chess game intensifying? The next morning, Malik met Agent Ramirez outside the federal building, her arms crossed, a folder in hand. We've traced the threats, she said, her tone urgent. They're not random. She opened the folder, revealing a chilling truth. A group of former officers, ones who dodged indictment, they've organized, calling themselves the Shield. Malik frowned, his mind racing.
A counter movement.
Exactly, Ramirez confirmed, her voice grim. They blame you for the arrests, their lost pensions, the department's disgrace. She paused, her eyes intense. And they're planning something.
What kind of something?
Malik asked, his voice steady. We're not sure yet, but they're targeting you and anyone who helped bring them down.
Can you feel the danger closing in? Malik exhaled slowly.
So they're trying to finish what they started. Ramirez nodded, her resolve firm. But this time we'll be ready. That evening, Malik gathered his team, the air thick with determination. Tasha had bolstered their security systems, Jared was tracking online chatter, and Nina was coordinating with community leaders and honest cops still in the department. But Malik had a bolder plan. We're not just defending ourselves, he declared, his voice fierce. We're going to confront them. Tasha's eyebrow shot up. How? Malik's slight smile was pure defiance. We make it impossible for them to hide. Can you sense the fight heating up? 2 days later, the community packed a massive auditorium for a public forum. Victims, activists, journalists, current and former officers, all united. Malik took the podium, his voice ringing out. This isn't just a story about corruption anymore, it's about what comes after. He gestured to the crowd, their faces alight with hope. Accountability means more than arrests. It means standing together to protect what we've built, facing down those who want to drag us back. Can you feel the unity, the strength in that moment? Malik paused, his voice steady but blazing with conviction, and oh, what a moment it was. And to those who call themselves the Shield, hear me loud and clear, you will not silence us.
Not now, not ever.
The crowd in the auditorium exploded into applause, their cheers shaking the walls like a thunderstorm.
Camera flash sparkled like lightning, capturing the fire in Malik's eyes.
But he wasn't done, not by a long shot. Tonight, he continued, his words ringing with purpose, we're unveiling something groundbreaking. A new organization, working hand in hand with federal oversight to make sure this kind of corruption never happens again. He swept aside a curtain, revealing a bold banner, Community Alliance for Transparency and Reform. Can you feel the hope surging through that room? The crowd roared, their cheers a tidal wave of unity, but in the back row, hidden in the shadows, 2 men stood, their faces twisted with rage. Former officers, their anger palpable. Can you imagine the nerve? One pulled out his phone, his whisper chilling. It's time. That night, as Malik left the forum, a black SUV slunk behind his car, its presence sinister. Tasha, riding shotgun, spotted it instantly, her voice sharp. We've got a tail. Malik nodded, his eyes steady on the rearview mirror. I see it. Jared's voice crackled through the speakerphone, urgent but calm. Stay cool. Ramirez's team is watching the area.
Can you feel the tension gripping the air?
Malik drove with unshakable calm, the SUV trailing like a predator. It kept its distance until they hit a quiet street near his office, then bam! It surged forward, blocking their path. Two men stepped out, dressed in civilian clothes, but Malik knew them instantly, former officers, the very ones Agent Ramirez had warned about. One clutched a metal baton, its glint menacing. The other held zip ties, their intent clear as day. Can you believe their audacity? Tasha reached for her phone, her fingers trembling, but Malik stopped her with a steady hand. Wait. He stepped out of the car, facing the men without a trace of fear. Can you picture his courage? You don't want to do this, he said, his voice calm but ironclad. The taller man sneered, his voice dripping with venom. You destroyed our lives. Malik's response was a quiet thunderbolt.
No.
Your choices destroyed your lives.
The shorter man advanced, is stretching. Time to shut you up for good. Can you feel your heart pounding?
But before they could take a step, spotlights blazed like a sunrise. Federal agents swarmed in, their boots pounding the pavement. Ramirez's voice echoed, sharp and commanding. Federal agents.
Drop your weapon.
The men froze, their bravado crumbling. One dropped the baton, its clatter echoing. The other bolted, but it was too late. Agents tackled him, cuffs snapping shut in seconds. Malik stood still, unshaken, a pillar of strength. Can you imagine the relief washing over that street? Ramirez approached, her nod one of respect. Good work staying calm. Malik's voice was steady, his wisdom clear. They were always going to make a move.
Better here, better now.
Ramirez's eyes gleamed with agreement. And now they're done. The next morning, headlines lit up Chicago. Plot to intimidate community leader foiled by federal agents. Former officers behind threats arrested. City charges toward reforms. Can you hear the city buzzing with triumph? For the first time, Malik allowed himself a quiet moment of relief, his heart lighter but still vigilant. The old system had tried everything, silencing him, punishing him, scaring him into submission, and it had crashed and burned. Not because he was some untouchable hero, but because he refused to back down. He knew a truth the corrupt could never grasp. The people they underestimate are the ones who bring them to their knees. Doesn't that just make your spirit soar? For the first time in months, Chicago woke to headlines that sang of hope, not scandal. Community unites after major police reforms announced. New oversight board formed. Citizens lead the way. Malik Thompson declines official role, stays independent watchdog. Malik stood outside the courthouse where this fight had sparked, its stone facade unchanged but its aura transformed. The fear that once clung to those steps? Gone. In its place bloomed respect, hope, and a powerful truth. Power, when held accountable, could serve the people again.
Can you feel the shift in the city's soul?
Inside, the new Civilian Oversight Board held its first public meeting, a historic moment. Tasha, Jared, and Nina sat in the audience, their presence a testament to their shared fight. Lieutenant Pierce, now a board advisor, brought her hard-earned wisdom. Sandra Mills, the fearless finance whistleblower, had been named Director of Transparency. Talk about a perfect fit. Dozens of citizens filled the seats, victims, activists, everyday people who finally believed their voices mattered. Can you picture that room, alive with possibility? Malik didn't go inside. Sitting behind a desk, passing resolutions? That wasn't his calling. He chose to be the eyes watching from the outside, the unrelenting reminder that even reformed systems need accountability. As he turned to leave, Agent Ramirez approached, her smile warm but knowing. You sure you want to stay on the sidelines? She teased. Malik chuckled, his eyes twinkling.
Sideline?
No way. I'm just moving to a different part of the field. Can you feel his energy, ready for the next challenge? Ramirez nodded, her respect clear. I figured. We've had calls from other cities. They want to consult with you, learn how you pulled this off. Malik's smile softened, his humility shining. It wasn't just me. I know, she said, but you showed them it's possible. She handed him a small folder, its contents heavy with purpose. One city's already spotting the same patterns you found here, similar abuses. If you're willing to help, Malik flipped it open, scanning data, names, more people underestimated. Of course, he said, his voice firm. The fight continues. Can you sense the ripple effect starting? That evening, Malik rejoined his team at the office, but it didn't feel like an office anymore. Oh no, it was a movement's headquarters. Tasha had updated the whiteboard, its words a battle cry, justice, accountability is just the beginning. The fight continues. And beneath, in bold, defiant letters, never underestimate anyone. They spent the night diving into new reports, new whistleblowers, new communities crying out for guidance. Jared paused, his eyes on Malik. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't stopped you that night? Malik's soft smile was full of reflection. All the time. I wouldn't be here, neither would this team, and none of these changes would have happened. Can you feel the weight of that what if? Nina's voice was warm, her insight profound. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Malik nodded, his gaze steady. They thought stopping me was a small thing, just another traffic stop, just another man they could laugh at and forget. He looked at his team, his voice fierce with pride. But they forgot something. Tasha grinned, her words a spark. Never underestimate anyone. Can you hear the unity in their laughter? Across town, former victims of Project Falcon were rebuilding, their lives proof of resilience. One opened a small business, its sign a beacon of hope. Another became a community liaison for the oversight board, bridging gaps with courage. A mother, once too scared to speak, now led workshops on citizens' rights, empowering others. And a young man Malik had mentored, once wrongly arrested, was studying law, his dream bold. I want to be the lawyer I wish I'd had back then, he told Malik, his pride shining. Can you feel their victories lifting the city? Even new police recruits were different, their training now including a mandatory segment on community trust and accountability. And who gave the first guest lecture? Lieutenant Pierce, her voice commanding as she told the rookies, never assume the person you stop is powerless. Never think silence means weakness. And never ever underestimate who you're dealing with. Can you imagine those words shaping a new generation? Months later, as Chicago settled into its new normal, a letter arrived for Malik. No name, just an out-of-state return address. Inside, a simple note stopped his heart. They underestimated me too. Watching your fight gave me the courage to start mine. Thank you. Attached was a news clipping, small-town police chief indicted after citizen-led investigation. Malik folded the letter slowly, his eyes misting. The ripple effect had begun. Can you feel the inspiration spreading? That night, alone on his balcony, Malik gazed over the city, its skyline gleaming, not perfect but better. Not because of him alone, but because of every person who refused to be silenced, every voice that shouted enough. Corruption thrives on silence, but accountability? It feeds on courage. As the wind stirred, Malik whispered the words he'd carried since that first night, never underestimate anyone. Somewhere he knew, another overlooked, dismissed soul was gearing up to stand tall. And when they did, they wouldn't be alone. This fight didn't belong to one man, it belonged to everyone, and it always would. Can you feel the power of that truth? Some stories don't just end, they echo, resonating far beyond their telling. Malik's journey wasn't only about exposing corruption or holding a few powerful people accountable, it was a blazing reminder to never underestimate anyone. The quiet man, the overlooked woman, the voice that stays calm while others shout, they carry strength. Justice doesn't always wear a badge or a robe. Sometimes it lives in those who refuse to give up, who stand when it's easier to sit, who choose truth even when it costs everything. Can you see the fire in their hearts? And for those watching, especially those who've lived long enough to know how the world works, there's a deeper lesson. Can you feel it? You're never too old to make a difference, never too small to spark change. Your wisdom, your experience, your resilience, they're the tools to rebuild a broken system. The fight for justice isn't a fleeting moment, it's a lifelong commitment, and it belongs to all of us. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone who refused to be silenced, let's keep these stories alive. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more tales that prove no one should ever be underestimated. Your voice matters, and together, we'll ensure no one is overlooked again. Can you join us in this fight? Malik paused, his voice steady but blazing with conviction, and oh, what a moment it was. And to those who call themselves the Shield, hear me loud and clear, you will not silence us. Not now, not ever. The crowd in the auditorium exploded into applause, their cheers shaking the walls like a thunderstorm. Camera flashes sparked like lightning, capturing the fire in Malik's eyes. But he wasn't done, not by a long shot. Tonight, he continued, his words ringing with purpose, we're unveiling something groundbreaking. A new organization, working hand in hand with federal oversight to make sure this kind of corruption never happens again. He swept aside a curtain, revealing a bold banner, Community Alliance for Transparency and Reform. Can you feel the hope surging through that room? The crowd roared, their cheers a tidal wave of unity, but in the back row, hidden in the shadows, two men stood, their faces twisted with rage. Former officers, their anger palpable. Can you imagine the nerve? One pulled out his phone, his whisper chilling. It's time. That night, as Malik left the forum, a black SUV slunk behind his car, its presence sinister. Tasha, riding shotgun, spotted it instantly, her voice sharp. We've got a tail. Malik nodded, his eyes steady on the rearview mirror. I see it. Jared's voice crackled through the speakerphone, urgent but calm. Stay cool. Ramirez's team is watching the area. Can you feel the tension gripping the air? Malik drove with unshakable calm, the SUV trailing like a predator. It kept its distance until they hit a quiet street near his office, then bam! It surged forward, blocking their path. Two men stepped out, dressed in civilian clothes, but Malik knew them instantly, former officers, the very ones Agent Ramirez had warned about. One clutched a metal baton, its glint menacing. The other held zip ties, their intent clear as day. Can you believe their audacity? Tasha reached for her phone, her fingers trembling, but Malik stopped her with a steady hand. Wait. He stepped out of the car, facing the men without a trace of fear. Can you picture his courage? You don't want to do this, he said, his voice calm but ironclad. The taller man sneered, his voice dripping with venom. You destroyed our lives. Malik's response was a quiet thunderbolt. No. Your choices destroyed your lives. The shorter man advanced, his threat chilling. Time to shut you up for good. Can you feel your heart pounding? But before they could take a step, spotlights blazed like a sunrise. Federal agents swarmed in, their boots pounding the pavement. Ramirez's voice echoed, sharp and commanding. Federal agents. Drop your weapons. The men froze, their bravado crumbling. One dropped the baton, its clatter echoing. The other bolted, but it was too late. Agents tackled him, cuffs snapping shut in seconds. Malik stood still, unshaken, a pillar of strength. Can you imagine the relief washing over that street? Ramirez approached, her nod one of respect. Good work staying calm. Malik's voice was steady, his wisdom clear. They were always going to make a move. Better here, better now. Ramirez's eyes gleamed with agreement. And now they're done. The next morning, headlines lit up Chicago, plot to intimidate community leader foiled by federal agents. Former officers behind threats arrested. City charges toward reforms. Can you hear the city buzzing with triumph? For the first time, Malik allowed himself a quiet moment of relief, his heart lighter but still vigilant. The old system had tried everything, silencing him, punishing him, scaring him into submission, and it had crashed and burned. Not because he was some untouchable hero, but because he refused to back down. He knew a truth the corrupt could never grasp. The people they underestimate are the ones who bring them to their knees. Doesn't that just make your spirit soar? For the first time in months, Chicago woke to headlines that sang of hope, not scandal. Community unites after major police reforms announced. New oversight board formed. Citizens lead the way. Malik Thompson declines official role, stays independent watchdog. Malik stood outside the courthouse where this fight had sparked, its stone facade unchanged but its aura transformed. The fear that once clung to those steps? Gone. In its place bloomed respect, hope, and a powerful truth. Power, when held accountable, could serve the people again. Can you feel the shift in the city's soul? Inside, the new Civilian Oversight Board held its first public meeting, a historic moment. Tasha, Jared, and Nina sat in the audience, their presence a testament to their shared fight. Lieutenant Pierce, now a board advisor, brought her hard-earned wisdom. Sandra Mills, the fearless finance whistleblower, had been named Director of Transparency. Talk about a perfect fit. Dozens of citizens filled the seats, victims, activists, everyday people who finally believed their voices mattered. Can you picture that room, alive with possibility? Malik didn't go inside. Sitting behind a desk, passing resolutions? That wasn't his calling. He chose to be the eyes watching from the outside, the unrelenting reminder that even reformed systems need accountability. As he turned to leave, Agent Ramirez approached, her smile warm but knowing. "You sure you want to stay on the sidelines?" she teased. Malik chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "Sidelines? No way. I'm just moving to a different part of the field." Can you feel his energy, ready for the next challenge? Ramirez nodded, her respect clear. "I figured. We've had calls from other cities. They want to consult with you, learn how you pulled this off." Malik's smile softened, his humility shining. "It wasn't just me." "I know," she said, "but you showed them it's possible." She handed him a small folder, its contents heavy with purpose. "One city's already spotting the same patterns you found here, similar abuses. If you're willing to help," Malik flipped it open, scanning data, names, more people underestimated. "Of course," he said, his voice firm. "The fight continues." Can you sense the ripple effect starting? That evening, Malik rejoined his team at the office, but it didn't feel like an office anymore. Oh no, it was a movement's headquarters. Tasha had updated the whiteboard, its words a battle cry: "Justice, accountability is just the beginning. The fight continues." And beneath, in bold, defiant letters, "Never underestimate anyone." They spent the night diving into new reports, new whistleblowers, new communities crying out for guidance. Jared paused, his eyes on Malik. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't stopped you that night?" Malik's soft smile was full of reflection. "All the time. I wouldn't be here, neither would this team, and none of these changes would have happened." Can you feel the weight of that what if? Nina's voice was warm, her insight profound. "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes." Malik nodded, his gaze steady. "They thought stopping me was a small thing, just another traffic stop, just another man they could laugh at and forget." He looked at his team, his voice fierce with pride. "But they forgot something." Tasha grinned, her words a spark. "Never underestimate anyone." Can you hear the unity in their laughter? Across town, former victims of Project Falcon were rebuilding, their lives proof of resilience. One opened a small business, its sign a beacon of hope. Another became a community liaison for the Oversight Board, bridging gaps with courage. A mother, once too scared to speak, now led workshops on citizens' rights, empowering others. And a young man Malik had mentored, once wrongly arrested, was studying law, his dream bold. "I want to be the lawyer I wish I'd had back then," he told Malik, his pride shining. Can you feel their victories lifting the city? Even new police recruits were different, their training now including a mandatory segment on community trust and accountability. And who gave the first guest lecture? Lieutenant Pierce, her voice commanding as she told the rookies, "Never assume the person you stop is powerless. Never think silence means weakness. And never ever underestimate who you're dealing with." Can you imagine those words shaping a new generation? Months later, as Chicago settled into its new normal, a letter arrived for Malik. No name, just an out-of-state return address. Inside, a simple note stopped his heart: "They underestimated me too. Watching your fight gave me the courage to start mine. Thank you." Attached was a news clipping: "Small-town police chief indicted after citizen-led investigation." Malik folded the letter slowly, his eyes misting. The ripple effect had begun. Can you feel the inspiration spreading? That night, alone on his balcony, Malik gazed over the city, its skyline gleaming, not perfect but better. Not because of him alone, but because of every person who refused to be silenced, every voice that shouted enough. Corruption thrives on silence, but accountability? It feeds on courage. As the wind stirred, Malik whispered the words he'd carried since that first night: never underestimate anyone. Somewhere, he knew, another overlooked, dismissed soul was gearing up to stand tall. And when they did, they wouldn't be alone. This fight didn't belong to one man, it belonged to everyone, and it always would. Can you feel the power of that truth? Some stories don't just end, they echo, resonating far beyond their telling. Malik's journey wasn't only about exposing corruption or holding a few powerful people accountable, it was a blazing reminder to never underestimate anyone. The quiet man, the overlooked woman, the voice that stays calm while others shout, they carry strength. Justice doesn't always wear a badge or a robe. Sometimes it lives in those who refuse to give up, who stand when it's easier to sit, who choose truth even when it costs everything. Can you see the fire in their hearts? And for those watching, especially those who've lived long enough to know how the world works, there's a deeper lesson. Can you feel it? You're never too old to make a difference, never too small to spark change. Your wisdom, your experience, your resilience, they're the tools to rebuild a broken system. The fight for justice isn't a fleeting moment, it's a lifelong commitment, and it belongs to all of us. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone who refused to be silenced, let's keep these stories alive. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more tales that prove no one should ever be underestimated. Your voice matters, and together, we'll ensure no one is overlooked again. Can you join us in this fight?